My son struck me and said, "This isn't your house anymore. Leave." So, after the funeral, I did exactly that, and I took the mortgage with me. By the next morning, their keys still worked, but the bank wouldn't. His words landed harder than his hand ever could. That slap, sharp and deliberate, cracked across my face in a way I never thought he was capable of. Not just the force of it, but the fact that it came from him. And all of it happened in the living room, just a few feet from where his father's casket still rested, surrounded by drooping lilies and the soft murmurs of grieving family. My face burned, more from the betrayal than the pain. I know what I heard. "Get out." He growled those words like a stranger, his voice stripped of anything familiar. Final. Behind him, his wife stood with her arms crossed, her chin lifted like a queen and a smug little smirk on her lips. She'd always acted like the house belonged to her, like I was just some overstaying guest in my own home. This was the boy I brought into the world. The one I cradled when his toys broke, when his knees bled, when his first love shattered his heart. I stood up for him when a teacher blamed him unfairly in the 5th grade. I worked back-to-back shifts to cover his college tuition after his father lost his job. I never asked for thanks. I never wanted anything back. And now here he was, kicking me out. But I didn't cry. I couldn't. The shock inside me had built a wall so thick no tears could break through. I looked him dead in the eye. He couldn't hold my stare, but I held his, because in that moment I wasn't just a grieving widow. I wasn't just a discarded mother. I was something stronger. Something he clearly didn't see coming. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away. My suitcase was still sitting by the hallway, barely unpacked from that awful week at the hospital, my husband's final days. I dragged it toward the door, my footsteps soft against the hardwood we had installed together nearly 4 decades ago. I didn't grab much. Not the old photo albums. Not my mother's porcelain angel. Not even my favorite quilt. But I did take something they'd regret losing. I took the mortgage paperwork. The cold outside slapped my skin too, but honestly, it felt gentler than my son's hand. Snow had just started falling, slow and soft, dusting my black coat. I didn't brush it off. It made me feel grounded. I walked down the driveway, past the old car my husband and I paid off together, past the rose bushes we planted for our 20th anniversary, past the wind chimes that always rang when Adam came home from school. No one came after me. Not a word. Not a step. Nothing. At the end of the street, I pulled out my phone and called a cab. While I waited, I sat on a wooden bench near the gas station. The teenage clerk inside looked out the window and came over. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked softly. I had once baked him a plate of cookies for Christmas. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just waiting on a ride." He offered to let me wait inside where it was warm. I nodded. He didn't ask anything else. He didn't stare at the swelling on my cheek. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and something lonelier. But the heat worked and the bed was clean. The receptionist didn't pry. She handed me a blanket and a cup of tea. I said no to both. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what had just happened. And it wasn't the slap I kept replaying, it was what he said. "This isn't your home anymore." I had scrubbed every inch of that house. I'd paid for half of it. I had prayed in it, cooked in it, fought for it. That house wasn't just wood and drywall. It was my whole life. And they wanted me to leave it like it was nothing more than a suitcase. But they didn't know everything. I hadn't told them that the mortgage wasn't just in my husband's name. I hadn't told them I was still a co-signer, a co-owner with my name right there on the deed and loan. As my husband, he had known. He saw this coming. One of the last things he ever told me with his voice shaking was, "If I go first, don't tell Adam about the documents. Not unless he turns on you." So I didn't. I kept them safe, stored in a deposit box at the bank along with his backup will, a handwritten letter and one important clause that would change everything. The next morning I made a call, not to Adam but to the bank. I asked them to halt the automatic mortgage payments. I gave them my name, my ID and the account info. They confirmed it. "You're listed as co-owner and co-borrower, ma'am. You're authorized," the banker said. "Thank you," I replied and hung up. By lunchtime my son would find the locks changed. But the real surprise would come later, when the bank called. And I wouldn't be there. I wasn't running away. I was simply gone. Quiet. After all these years of staying silent, it was my silence that would finally say everything that needed saying. That house didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't a gift. It was built, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, sacrifice by sacrifice. I still remember signing the first mortgage papers with trembling hands in 1987, when the snow piled so high it nearly buried the front porch. We couldn't afford the heat, but we made it through. I had insisted on being co-owner, not because I didn't trust him but because his credit was shot. He had just shut down a failed auto shop and banks wouldn't give him the time of day. But I believed in us. Always did. I'd had steady work for years. Over a decade actually, as a medical clerk at the small clinic in our town. My paycheck was consistent, my credit was clean, and when we needed a mortgage it was my name that got the bank to say yes. It was my name that opened that door, so my name went on the deed. We didn't dwell on it afterward. My husband took quiet pride in the arrangement, never saying much, though I still remember when we planted our first hydrangeas in the yard, he leaned in close and whispered, "We built this together, you and me." And he was right. Every single month we paid what we owed. Sometimes that meant no dinners out. Sometimes we skipped Christmas gifts altogether. Sometimes we patched up roof leaks ourselves, using duct tape and grit. But we never missed a payment. The bank always sent statements with both our names. The mailbox knew what we were, equals. But everything changed in 2012. That year, the man who once carried me over puddles now struggled to lift a coffee mug. The medical bills piled up faster than insurance could keep up. He had to stop working and Social Security came in slow and tight. So I picked up extra hours at the clinic. Mostly night shifts. I learned how to make 2 grocery bags stretch across 7 days. On weekends I cleaned houses. I wore gloves to hide the cracks in my hands. And I never complained. Not to him and never to Adam. Adam had just started his own family. He was building something of his own and I didn't want to weigh him down. I told him we were fine even when I was counting coins to fill the tank. When he asked why I looked so tired I just smiled and blamed it on getting older. He didn't press. And maybe that was where I went wrong. Maybe if I had let him see how hard I was really trying, maybe he would have looked at me differently. Or maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have made a difference at all. But I made a choice, to protect him from the burden I carried. And now, after all that, he threw me out of the very house my name had helped pay for. It wasn't just cruel, it was like trying to erase me. They acted like the place belonged to them. Walked through its rooms like royalty, proud of something they hadn't earned. His wife changed the curtains, painted over the living room, even redid the kitchen, never once asking me. She called it her domain. I let her think it was. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted peace. I thought that if I stepped back they might offer me respect in return. But instead of kindness they gave me rules. I remember one night not long ago I was dusting the bookshelf when she turned to me and said, "You really should ask before touching things. We're trying to keep the aesthetic consistent." That was my bookshelf. My books. That very shelf had been built by my husband's hands. I went to my room, closed the door and cried. Not from what she said but because I saw what was coming. She was rewriting the story. And Adam, he let her. He started calling the place their house. Stopped asking for my thoughts. Treated me like a distant relative. Tolerated but never truly welcome. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't wave papers in anyone's face. But I never got rid of anything either. Every payment stub, every mortgage slip, every copy of the deed, I kept them all neatly filed in a manila folder at the bottom of my dresser. And when my husband passed, I took that folder and placed it in a safe deposit box at the bank, alongside his backup will and a letter he left me just in case. I'd spent my whole life protecting Adam. But I'd also quietly protected myself. So when they slammed that door in my face, they thought they'd finally taken control. What they didn't know was that the house wasn't just built with wood and paint. It was built on paper. Legal paper. And one of those names still belonged to me. About a week before he died, my husband called me into the bedroom. Adam and his wife had gone out for groceries. He lay in bed, thinner than I'd ever seen him, the shape of his bones pressing through his flannel pajamas, but his eyes were clear. Sharper than they'd been in weeks. "Come sit," he said, patting the edge of the bed. I sat down and he reached into the nightstand drawer, pulling out a small brown envelope. "Don't open it now," he said, placing it gently in my hands. "And don't tell Adam about it. Not unless..." He coughed hard, struggling to finish. "Not unless what?" I asked softly. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said it. "Not unless he hurts you." I stared at him, confused. What do you mean hurts me? I've seen how he talks to you sometimes. And how she treats you. And how he lets her, he whispered. I swallowed my throat thick. I didn't want to talk about that. Not while he was like this. You're overthinking, I whispered. He's just under pressure. But my husband shook his head slowly. No. You've always been too quick to forgive. That's why I had those documents drawn up. I had the lawyer include a clause. Just in case. If I go before you and they turn on you, I want you protected. I gripped the envelope tighter. What's in here? A second will. A legal addendum. It's notarized. If Adam ever insults you, mistreats you, or forces you out of this house, he loses everything. Every dollar. Every right. Every claim. My hands trembled. He reached out slowly and touched my wrist. I never wanted it to come to that. But I couldn't leave this world without knowing you'd have a say. That you'd have something left. I leaned in, tears burning behind my eyes, and kissed his forehead. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. But I hope I never need to use it. He gave me the softest smile. Me too, he whispered. He passed away 5 days later. The funeral came and went like winter wind. Quiet, cold, and over too soon. A few friends came. Some of his old co-workers paid their respects. Adam barely spoke a word during the entire service. His wife, on the other hand, made sure all eyes were on her, crying louder than anyone else, even though she'd only been in his life for 10 years. I didn't say a thing. I just sat there holding the folded flag they handed me and the last photo we ever took together. In my coat pocket I kept the unopened letter. The next morning I walked into the bank. The woman at the front desk gave me a warm smile. Her name tag read Melinda. Safe deposit box? She asked gently. I nodded. Box 221 under Mary Sullivan. She checked my ID, handed me the key, and led me down the quiet hall to the vault room. I opened the box, placed the letter inside next to the backup will, a USB drive with scans of all the mortgage documents, and a copy of the original title to our house. I labeled everything clearly, in case of emergency, then locked it all away. I didn't want to think about it again. I didn't want to live in a world where my own son would ever make me need those papers. But that world had already arrived. 3 days after the slap I came back to the bank. Melinda wasn't working that day, but a new clerk helped me. He looked barely 20, but his manner was calm and respectful. Need access? He asked. Yes, I replied. Box 221. He walked me to the same private room. This time when I opened the box I didn't hesitate. My hands were steady. I pulled out the letter first. The paper had yellowed a bit, but the handwriting was still his, strong and familiar. To my dearest Mary, it began. I read it again even though I already knew every word by heart. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if you're reading this because Adam did what I prayed he never would, then I'm sorry. But you need to know you are not weak. You are not invisible. That house is just as much yours as it ever was mine. Your hands helped build it. Your sacrifices helped pay for it. No one, especially not our son, has the right to erase that. I swallowed the lump in my throat. There's a clause in the supplemental will. You know it. If you need it, use it. Don't let guilt keep you quiet. You've spent your whole life being the glue that held this family together. Maybe now is the time to stop holding everything up for everyone else. He had signed it, dated it October 14, 2020, just weeks before his last hospital stay. Beneath the letter was the will. Confirmed everything. It named me as the primary executor of the estate and included one very specific clause. In the event that my son Adam Sullivan physically or verbally abuses my wife, Mary Sullivan, or attempts to evict her from the family home, all inheritance rights under this will shall be void. The estate shall instead transfer to a trust under Mary's sole control. It was notarized. Witnessed. Bulletproof. I sat in that silent room for a long while, breathing slow and deep. I never wanted this kind of power. But they had forced me into it. They forgot something critical. Just because I had stayed quiet didn't mean I hadn't been careful. I put the documents back in the box but took the USB stick with me, sliding it into my purse. I planned to email the files to my lawyer that same afternoon, along with the recording I'd made the night Adam slapped me. Because yes, I recorded it. His voice was crystal clear. This isn't your home anymore. Get out. That was all I needed. The reason. My husband had prepared me. Now I was ready to act. The next morning I returned to the bank. Ice had formed overnight and the sidewalks were slick, but I moved slowly and with purpose. I wasn't stumbling. I wasn't broken. I was done being quiet just to keep the peace. By 9:05 I was seated across from a loan officer in a glass-walled office. Her name tag read Jessica. She wore a burgundy blazer and had soft, curious eyes. I saw them flicker slightly when she read my paperwork. "You'd like to cancel the automatic mortgage payments, Mrs. Sullivan?" she asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "And I'd like to review the full loan file. Originals if possible." Jessica blinked. "We can prepare copies for you. Are you aware this may affect?" "I'm the co-borrower," I cut in gently. "The loan was issued to both my late husband and me. I have the right to revoke authorization. You'll find my name on every single page." He paused, typing. Then nodded. "You're correct. And you're listed as co-owner on the title as well." "I know," I said. "Please pull the documents." She stepped out and returned with a thick manila folder, my name typed neatly across the tab. Seeing it made me smile just a little. 35 years of payments, records, renewals. All there. All mine to reclaim. I signed the cancellation form. It took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to undo what they thought was forever. Jessica handed me the file. "Is there anything else I can help you with, Mrs. Sullivan?" "Yes," I said. "Please flag the account. No one is allowed to resume payments or renegotiate the loan without my written consent." She nodded immediately. "Of course. We'll place a hold on it." As I walked out of the bank, the wind tugged at my coat, but I didn't flinch. I pulled my coat tighter around me as I stepped into the wind, but something warm flickered quietly inside. It wasn't anger and it sure wasn't revenge. It was something deeper. Something steady. A quiet sense of knowing. I had been getting ready for this even when I didn't know it. Back at the small one-room apartment I'd rented on a monthly lease, I opened my laptop and plugged in a USB drive. The folder popped up instantly, my husband's files organized to the last detail. He had labeled every document by date, by type, by legal reference. At the very bottom I added one more, the recording from the night Adam hit me. I hadn't even meant to record it. But after my husband's first stroke, I'd gotten in the habit of carrying a recorder in my coat pocket. For doctor's instructions, medication reminders, grocery lists. That night I'd meant to leave myself a note about picking up a refill. Instead it captured everything, his voice, the slap, and the words that followed. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." Clear as glass. Unmistakable. Damning. I uploaded the recording to a secure folder and emailed everything. Every file, every document, to the lawyer who had helped draft the supplemental will. Her name was Megan Dale. My subject line was simple. Urgent. Clause 17B activation. I attached the scan of the will, the mortgage documents, and the recording. 5 minutes later my phone rang. "Mrs. Sullivan?" a calm voice said. "Yes," I answered. "This is Megan Dale. I received your email and I've reviewed the materials." Her voice was clear, professional, but kind. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. But more importantly, I want to tell you, you've done everything exactly right." I stayed silent. "Clause 17B is valid," she continued. "The audio file confirms both verbal abuse and an illegal eviction. As outlined in your husband's will, your son forfeits his inheritance immediately. Can you act on this now?" "Yes," I said. "I'll file the notification today. We'll issue a cease and desist letter to your son's attorney and freeze all asset disbursements. Do you have a place to stay?" "For now," I replied. "I'd recommend we schedule a formal review this week. But in the meantime, please know this, you're not powerless anymore." I thanked her quietly and hung up. That night I sat in the old armchair beside the window. The motel room was small and plain, but the view was calm. No traffic, no slammed doors, no cold silences passed like weapons across the dinner table. Just quiet. Not the quiet of being ignored. The quiet of being free. I thought of my husband and how he had seen all of this coming. Not death, but what would happen after. He hadn't feared for himself. He had worried about me. Left behind with a son who'd forgotten how to care. I had forgiven Adam so many times over the years. The missed birthdays. The short replies. The moments when his love came with conditions. I told myself that's what mothers do. That love means being patient, means holding it together. But love should never mean disappearing for the sake of peace. I'd done that for far too long. The next day Megan filed the paperwork. The court responded with a temporary freeze on the estate. Adam would be officially notified within 48 hours. And the bank? They'd already processed the mortgage cancellation. From now on, any payment attempt would be flagged as unauthorized. In legal terms, in financial terms, and in emotional terms, I had become a wall. A wall Adam could no longer climb or knock down. I didn't call him. I didn't explain. I didn't warn him. I simply acted. Quietly. Precisely. Because the most powerful thing a woman can do is remember everything they thought she forgot. The first time I saw what they'd done to the house, it was through someone else's phone. I was at the pharmacy waiting for my prescription when the young woman behind the counter, someone who used to babysit my neighbor's twins, held up her phone. "Mrs. Sullivan, I didn't know you moved out. Your daughter-in-law's been posting the renovations." I looked at the screen, and there was a photo of my old living room. The same one where my husband and I danced on our 25th anniversary. Now stripped bare. White and gold curtains. New flooring. A cream leather sectional. The caption read, "Fresh start. Goodbye to the darkness. Hello to our forever home." Darkness. That's what she called me. I gave a polite nod, took my bag and walked back to my apartment. But inside something began to settle. It wasn't pain. Not even anger. It was the cold, metallic taste of clarity. They really believed they had won. They thought I'd vanished, just an old coat tossed out with the trash. Something used. Something outdated. Something they didn't need. But they didn't know what was coming. The posts kept showing up. Their kitchen remodel. A new chandelier. Their wine nights. Boomerangs of Adam hanging a sign that read, "Love lives here." They served charcuterie on the dining table my husband had built with his own 2 hands. And through all of that, no call. No message. Not even a whisper of gratitude for the life I'd poured into those walls. But then, 31 days after I terminated the mortgage, the bank issued the notice. A formal letter sent to the address on file. Read. Subject. Default notification, Sullivan residence. Due to the co-borrower's revocation of payment authorization and failure to meet scheduled mortgage obligations, the account is now in breach of contract. If the issue is not resolved within 15 business days, the property will be subject to foreclosure and repossession. I didn't have to be there to see their faces, but I saw it clearly in my mind. The hush as they tore open the envelope. The confusion twisting into panic. The quick search for a loophole, a typo, anything. Then came the anger. And finally, the slow dawning horror, because they had no idea. They'd never read the fine print. They thought I was just some old woman. No voice, no fight, no teeth left to bite. But I was the teeth. I was the signature. I was the name standing next to their dream. No. I was the reason it was falling apart. That evening Adam called me. His name lit up my phone screen for the first time in over a month. I thought about ignoring it. Letting it ring. But I wanted to hear what he'd say. Just once. So I picked up. His voice was shaky, confused, not angry. Not yet. Just small. "Mom," he said. I didn't answer. I don't understand. We got a letter about the house. Something about foreclosure? What's going on? Silence. Did you do something to the payments? I waited 3 full seconds before answering. Yeah. He paused. Why? His voice broke on that word. Why would you do that? We're gonna lose the house. I didn't respond. Mom, please. His voice cracked again. He was crying now. I could hear it. The kind of breathless panic that only shows up when a man realizes he isn't untouchable anymore. We didn't mean it, he said softly. It was just, emotions were high after Dad's funeral. We weren't thinking. You weren't thinking. That's what they always say when they want to undo the damage, like it never happened in the first place. Please, he whispered. We can fix this. Just call the bank. Tell them it was a mistake. Restart the payments. We can talk. We can work something out. I closed my eyes. This was the same voice that had told me to get out. The same voice that stood back while his wife erased my life, one beige wall at a time. I can't, I said simply. But it's your house too, he pleaded. No, I said, my tone flat as glass. You told me it wasn't. Remember. Silence. I didn't wait for an answer. I hit the red button. Then I blocked his number. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of chamomile tea and the blanket over my lap. Outside the traffic hummed. Inside it was quiet. I didn't feel triumphant. But I did feel something else. Peace. Because protecting myself finally mattered more than protecting their comfort. They thought they had won. But they hadn't even known the rules. I showed up late on purpose. The family meeting was already in full swing at my sister-in-law's house. Neutral ground, they called it. A long table was set, coffee brewed, plates of lemon cookies laid out like it was a church potluck instead of a reckoning. Adam sat at the head of the table beside his wife, who wore a pale pink blazer and a porcelain smile, perfect and fake. The moment I walked through the door, the room fell silent. I didn't apologize for being late. I didn't say hello. I kept my coat on, boots still wet from the melting snow, tote bag over one shoulder. I made no excuses. I offered no explanations. I walked straight to the center of the room, set the tote down on the table, and began placing what I had brought. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each item laid out carefully. The original will, the supplemental will, the USB containing the audio recording, and a notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. No one spoke as I sat down across from Adam. His eyes were wide. His wife's fingers were white-knuckled on the edge of her chair. I folded my hands and looked to Megan, my lawyer, who had arrived early, per my request. She stood calmly. "Thank you everyone for being here," she said in her steady, professional voice. "I represent Mrs. Mary Sullivan, widow of the late Mr. Thomas Sullivan. The purpose of this meeting is to formally present legal updates regarding Mr. Sullivan's estate." Adam raised a hand, already flustered. "Wait, why is this happening now? I thought everything was all ready." "Please allow me to finish," Megan said coolly. He shut his mouth. She lifted the supplemental will. "This document, signed and notarized in 2020, includes a clause, Clause 17b, which clearly states, if the heir Adam Sullivan engages in any verbal abuse, physical harm, or attempts to evict Mrs. Mary Sullivan from the family home, all inheritance rights are immediately revoked." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Eviction?" Megan nodded. "We have submitted audio evidence of Mr. Adam Sullivan stating, 'This isn't your home anymore. Get out.' This occurred within hours of Mr. Sullivan's funeral." Adam shot up from his chair, knocking it back. "That was taken out of context." Without flinching, Megan reached into her bag and pulled out a small portable speaker. She pressed play. His voice filled the room. Loud. Clear. Unmistakable. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." Then came the sound of a slap. Then silence. The room froze. Everyone looked at him. Then at me. No one spoke. No one moved. Adam looked like the wind had been knocked clean out of him. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to speak. The words had done it for me. Megan paused the playback. "Under the terms of the will," she continued, "Mr. Sullivan forfeits all claims to the estate. Full ownership of assets, including the family home, is transferred to Mrs. Mary Sullivan." He turned to me. "You may now decide whether to enforce this ruling or enter negotiations. The law is entirely in your favor." I looked around the table. The aunts and uncles who said nothing when I was thrown out. The cousins who never called. This family, the same one that always treated me like a background character in my own life, was finally looking at me. Finally hearing me. Adam sat back down, shaking. "Mom, please," he whispered. "I didn't mean it. I was grieving. I was upset. You know me. You know I wouldn't." "You did," I said, my voice soft, steady. "You did it in front of your wife. In front of your father's body. And it didn't stop there. You changed the locks. You posted photos of my kitchen, calling it your forever home. You knew exactly what you were doing." His wife opened her mouth to speak, but Megan raised a hand. "This isn't a debate," she said. "The documents are clear. The law is clear." Adam buried his face in his hands. "I'm going to lose everything." I leaned forward just a little. "You already did." He looked up at me, eyes red and glassy. "I'm your son. And I was your mother," I replied, calm as ever. "And you treated me like a tenant." Silence. I stood up, gathered my documents and slid them back into my tote bag. No one moved to stop me. My boots tapped lightly against the tile as I walked to the door. I turned back once. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came here with the truth. What you choose to do with it now, that's up to you. Then I left. I didn't need to slam the door. The silence behind me said enough. It was raining the day they showed up. I heard the knock before I saw them, 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost shy. Then a pause. Then one more, like they weren't sure if they should knock again or just leave. I opened the door slowly. Adam stood in the hallway of my apartment building, soaked to the bone, rain dripping from his collar. His wife stood behind him, her eyes rimmed red but dry. He looked older than he should have, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with time. He wasn't wearing a coat. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking. I said nothing. I didn't know where else to go, he stammered. The foreclosure, the letter. I tried to stop it. I called the bank. But they said I wasn't authorized. That the payments were suspended. That I had no standing. "You don't," I said flatly. His face twisted and he dropped to his knees right there on the hallway carpet. "Please, Mom. I'm sorry. We're sorry." His wife stood still, holding her purse like a shield, fingers clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. For the first time she didn't look powerful. She looked cornered. "We made a mistake," Adam said, almost a whisper. "We both did. We let pride take over. We thought we were doing the right thing. But we were cruel. We were wrong." I didn't move. "Please," he begged. "Talk to the bank. Reinstate the mortgage. Let us take over the payments. We'll cover everything. We'll make it right. You can come home or not. Whatever you want. Just don't let us lose the house." I opened the door a little wider. He looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. But I didn't let them in. Instead, I stepped out into the hallway, reached into my purse and pulled out a folded document inside a clear sleeve. "This," I said, handing it to him, "is the deed transfer. As of yesterday, the house is no longer mine." He blinked. "What?" "I sold it." "To who?" his wife asked sharply, panic rising in her voice. "To the Elder Protection Foundation," I replied. "They're converting it into a transitional home for senior women who've been displaced. Women like me." Adam's mouth opened but nothing came out. "You sold it," he whispered. I nodded. "Cash buyer. Immediate transfer. It's done." "But why would you do that? It was our home." "No," I said quietly. "It was never yours. It was built by your father and me. Paid for with my sweat, my second jobs, my silence. You lived in it. You used it. But it was never yours." His wife finally found her voice. "That was a mistake. We got carried away. You could have just talked to us." "I tried," I said. "I tried every time you rolled your eyes at me over dinner. Every time you changed something without asking. Every time you walked past me like I was furniture. I spoke plenty. You just didn't listen." Adam looked down. His shoulders trembled. "I don't want your apology," I said. "I want your understanding." "I understand," he said, and this time the tears came freely. "I was wrong. I looked at him, my son. The boy who once gave me crayon cards for Mother's Day. Who held my hand to cross the street. Who used to run into my arms after school. Now he was kneeling. And I had already stood up. "I forgive you," I said. "But I'm not going to fix this for you." He nodded, slow, heavy. As I turned to go back inside, I said one last thing. "I didn't keep the house. I kept my peace." Then I closed the door. And for the first time in years I locked it, not to keep anyone out but to keep something else in.